All right, welcome to the situation update for Thursday, January 13th, 2022. This is Mike Adams here. Thank you for joining me today. Also, this is appearing on brighteonradio.com, and that's our new network, just launched this week. You got to check it out at brighteonradio.com. Spread the word. It's free speech radio. It's audio only via the web. Okay, so today, I want to start out with a piece of good news for you. Some research crossed my desk today, and it was covered by Daily Signal, and it talks about how CBDA, which is one of the cannabinoids from cannabis extracts, CBDA is pretty cool stuff. And there was another cannabinoid that was also involved in the research. I think it was talking about CBG, but I'd have to go back and check my notes. Now, CBDA, the A stands for acid, and the molecule is known as cannabidiolic acid. Okay, so it's one of the lesser known cannabinoids. Where most people know about CBD, right? You've heard about that, cannabidiol. Well, not a lot of people have heard about CBDA. And CBDA, then, as I said, is protective against the spike protein. But there's something you need to know about CBDA. Now, I worked on a method in my lab for, it seems like it was over a year. Yeah, it was well over a year. Myself and some colleagues were working on a method using a single quad mass spec to quantitate cannabinoids, including CBDA, using just a simple single quad instrument. I guess it's not so simple, but it's simple compared to a triple quad. So anyway, we did a paper on this, and it's published in the LCGC journal. And it was a couple of years ago. It was one of the most popular articles of the year. It's in chromatographyonline.com if you want to read about it. And it talks about the quantitation of cannabinoids in cannabis extracts using single quad mass spec instrumentation. So my name's on that. I'm one of the researchers. Well, it turns out that CBDA is a very fragile molecule. And we found this out during the research. Number one, it's easy to ruin with heat. And what happens is a process called decarboxylation. So there are carboxyl groups on the outside perimeter of the molecule, and these groups give the molecule a lot of its structure and function. But under heat, those carboxyl groups are, well, altered or lost, really. And then it reverts to CBD. So, in other words, let me say it this way. When cannabis is growing in the field and you just take leaves or even stems from it, you'll have a ratio of CBD to CBDA. And that ratio, it might be, I don't know, let's say 5-1. And that's where it begins. But if you heat process that cannabis through a hot extraction process, you're going to lose the CBDA because you're going to lose the carboxyl groups, and then you're going to end up with more CBD. So whereas you started with 5-1, let's say, you're going to end up with just like 6 parts CBD and 0 CBDA. So if you are actually looking to get CBDA, you have to make sure that you're getting a CBD product that has not been heat processed and not even subjected to high heat during shipping, because CBDA is very, very fragile. And yes, even shipping it on a UPS truck, you will lose a certain amount of CBDA. We found this in the lab when we actually, we purchased standards for these. So we would have CBD standards and we'd have CBDA standards. And the CBDA standards would just lose their potency over time, even at room temperature. There's a certain amount of loss that takes place. And then if you heat it, then it's just completely destroyed. So this is really underscoring the importance of what you might say raw foods or raw medicine, raw herbs, no heat processing. It's very important. It makes it more potent medicine. But one of the things that I notice in the industry is that since the emphasis over these years has been on CBD alone, that a lot of companies are selling only CBD that contains no CBDA. So a lot of CBD is just isolated CBD that is reconstituted sometimes in like glycerin or some kind of, liquid or solvent or water or what have you. Or sometimes, they make honey with it and you have CBD honey, things like that. But the real potency of cannabis is found in the full spectrum of the extracts. And that's where you're going to get, CBG and CBDA. And also, by the way, different variants of trace amounts of THC. And THC, typically it's below 0.3% in these extracts that are offered out there. There are different configurations or polymorphisms of THC, and they actually show up in different times on the extracts when you're using chromatography. But I'm not going to spend any more time on this, but my point is that if you want to experiment with this, make sure you find somebody that's got CBDA at a verified level in the cannabis extracts. And currently, I don't know anybody that has that. Not even us or just nobody. I don't know anybody that's quantitating the CBDA. Maybe somebody is, and I'm just not aware of it. It's like, use the whole herb. And you may not even know why. But trust me, there's more medicine in there, in all those molecules. It's like, yeah, you could have ascorbic acid, which is isolated vitamin C, and that has its uses and it's important. But what if you ate camu super fruits that have high vitamin C, but they have a bunch of other stuff as well? You may not even know what that other stuff is. But trust me, it has medicinal uses. That's the thing. So this is why I love advocating for superfoods that have high nutrients. And I'm all about full spectrum nutrition and not just isolated nutrients, although again, they sometimes have their uses, but full spectrum is something that's very important. This is why I drink salads every day in my smoothie and just stuffing lettuce into my smoothies. And I'm growing my own strawberries and I put those into my smoothies. It's actually making me drool right now. I just throw strawberries in there. Yeah, strawberries are high in vitamin C, but what else do they have? All kinds of stuff. Stuff that maybe scientists won't even figure out it's useful for another 5 to 10 years. But should you be eating whole strawberries? Absolutely, especially if you grow them yourself and they're completely pesticide free, which is what I do. I just wish it could produce more strawberries. It's not a huge amount every day. I get like 2 or 3 berries out of my current hydroponic system. But you know what? Hey, 2 or 3 berries is better than 0. So, eat what you can grow and grow what you can. And by the way, given what's coming with the food supply restrictions right now, if you don't grow food, you're probably going to be really hungry. So, grow to augment your food. Save food, stockpile food, have some storable food, but also learn how to grow. And sprouting is the easiest way to get into that. And you can throw sprouts into your smoothies and you can just drink sprouts. I mean, I know it's not super delicious with the sprouts. I prefer to drink kale and lettuce. Sprouts can be like, whoa, that's a little tangy right there. But it's the easiest, simplest way to get a lot of good nutrition. And yeah, you can blend them up and just add lots of bananas and coconut water and you'll be able to choke it down. Trust me. All right, now moving on to other urgent issues of our current fight for human freedom. The mayor of DC, Muriel Bowser, I think that's her name, she declared a 2-week state of emergency for the District of Columbia. And this actually happened yesterday or the night before. And so this is already underway. Now, according to this state of emergency, which I'm not even sure how they could possibly enforce this, but according to the directive, so all the arguments they said about why it's racist for voter ID, how come those don't apply to leaving your house with an ID? I mean, their argument is that poor black folks can't get an ID and therefore requiring a voter ID is racist. Well, if poor black folks can't get an ID, how can they get an ID to leave their house? And if you can't leave your house unless you already have an ID, how are you supposed to go get an ID so that you can leave your house? You see the obvious catch-22 here, which is just another example of insanity. But that's just the first part of this. So this is one of those show me your papers moments. Now, which, by the way, ding, another conspiracy theory just came true. It's not like the Jimmy Stewart movie. Like every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. No, every time a bell rings, another conspiracy theory just came true. It's just on and on and on. But now it's like you're a prisoner in your home unless you have paperwork to prove you've been vaccinated. You're a prisoner. Now, if they really start to enforce this, imagine what this is going to look like. So, you're driving down the street, you're turning into a neighborhood, or you're on a highway or something, and you get flagged over, and everybody has to go through onto the exactly. And you might say, well, they'll fine you. Okay, they might start doing that. Oh, here's $100 ticket, or here's a $500 ticket, or if you're in Australia, here's a $5,000 ticket. Because they're really crazy about that in Australia. And again, they may start with fines, but before long, they're going to start taking people out of their cars and taking them into, that's coming in America. That's going to happen in Washington State. It's going to happen in California. It's going to happen in DC, New York, unless we stop them. Now, all of this can be stopped if people would just rise up peacefully and say enough is enough, and say we're not going to participate in this nonsense. It's over. This whole thing could be stopped. But as long as people go along with this, they're just going to keep ratcheting up the tyranny while the globalists laugh to themselves. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe these morons are still cooperating. It's incredible. What can we do next? And it's like, let's try this. Let's just rip them out of their homes. How about that? Let's see if they'll go along with that. Let's take their children away from them. Let's see if they'll go along with that. Let's make them take 7 shots. How about that? If you go along with it, there's no end to this. If we resist it peacefully and with determination and based on human rights, then this whole thing ends. But I still don't see enough critical mass awakening that this is going to end anytime soon, because from what I see, people are still going along with it. The oblivious masses. Because for some reason, they just love to be told what to do. Like, wear a mask. Yes, sir. Take a shot. Oh, I can't wait. Take another shot. Oh, please. Just everything. They want to be told what to do. They want to be slaves to a medical martial law totalitarian system. So they're going along with it. So I don't know where this ends. But in the meantime, if you are stuck in the wrong blue city, such as DC, you're going to be a prisoner in your own home. And so the reason I mention all that is because I have to get to this urgent appeal, this message to you, which is your time to escape the blue cities is almost over. So for those of you who are still in blue cities, and I know it's not that many listening to this, if you've been listening to this podcast, you've fled the blue cities probably long before now. But some of you, I know you have situations. You might have a family member in a nursing home in the city or near the city. You might have a job that you can't leave for whatever reason. You might have children in school. I don't know. And maybe you just like living in the city. I don't know. But what I'm here to tell you is that your time to leave is rapidly closing. That window of opportunity is slamming shut. Okay? So it's no longer a conspiracy theory to say that there's going to be medical martial law in America. It was instituted 2 days ago in DC. Now, as I've said, this isn't going to happen everywhere all at once. It's going to happen in certain locations in the blue cities, which is what I've said over and over again. So this is happening, in DC. It's going to happen probably in Seattle. It's going to happen in Los Angeles and various California cities and New York City and so on, probably Chicago. And, we could name others. But it's not going to happen everywhere. The problem is if you haven't fled the blue cities by the time the medical martial law is in place, it's like, your situation is bad when you're trying to flee to communist China to escape your own country. But people try to flee North Korea, so they build fences to keep people in. And the same thing was true in East Berlin, in the Cold War. That's why they had the Berlin Wall. It was to keep the people on the east side of Berlin, to prevent them from fleeing to the west side of Berlin, which was, the Western capitalist side of all of this, whereas the east side of Berlin was the communist side run by essentially the Soviet Union. So everywhere that you have totalitarian governments, they have to entrap and enslave their people and make them prisoners to prevent them from leaving. Well, that's what Mayor Bowser just did in DC. You can't leave. You are a prisoner in your own home. And if you don't take the shot, you're not even going to be allowed to bug out unless you're just lucky and you happen to evade, the checkpoints. But now we're talking about the kind of people who lived in East Berlin who had to try to sneak across the Berlin Wall, and they might get shot doing so. Just go look at the old videos of that. So what's your answer to that? Well, obviously don't be there. Like, don't get trapped in the East Berlin version of Seattle. And all of Seattle is going to be a danger zone. Or don't get trapped in New York City when this thing comes down. Don't get trapped in DC. Get the heck out while you can. And so the reason I bring all this up is because I have to tell you the urgency of, the lateness of the hour here. Your time is seriously running out. Everybody's time is. And you might have relatives or friends who live in the blue cities, and they're going to be locked down. And I think that's what the globalists want. They want to provoke a kind of civil war. But a lot of people, on the other hand, will go along with this, just as people have done through every Holocaust in world history. That's the thing. Not everybody resisted. In fact, very few people resisted. You can go back and look at the Holocaust of Nazi Germany or Cambodia, the mass death campaigns of Stalinism or Mao or whoever. Go throughout world history, you'll find a shocking truth, which is that most people did not resist. You're like, why? Well, because the government didn't come along and announce that this is an extermination campaign. They told them, no, we're going to take care of you. We're going to feed you. Here, come to our camps. You're going to have clothing and food and medicine. This is a depopulation campaign. Please take the shot so you can be eliminated. They're not going to come out with that campaign. They're going to say, this is good for you. Take it. Take the shot. Everybody's taking it. They're going to pay celebrities to tell you to take the shot. They're going to pay influencers. That is some serious hypnosis, massive brainwashing that has been taking place among the American people, the Canadian people, the British people, just on and on across Europe and everywhere. Australian people. Incredible brainwashing. The brainwashing is so complete that you can literally tell somebody the truth and they will dismiss the truth, even though the truth is uttered by the same authorities that they claim to believe. It's just astonishing. Now, for these people who are dumb enough to believe the lies, even when these authorities are telling them the truth, admitting it all, there's a place where those people like to go. It's called Facebook. And the funny thing that's happened is the intelligent, informed people of the world have moved away from Facebook in the same sense that they're moving out of the blue cities. So they're moving off of Facebook and they're going to, Getter or Parler or Brighteon.social, for example, or, wherever, alternative platforms. And my username is just Health Ranger. So I'd like to just remind you and invite you to join me on these other platforms, and also just get off of Facebook. It's like moron central there now. If you think about who's still remaining, just get off of Facebook, get off of Twitter, go to places where you can speak the truth. And now, years after the censorship began, we actually have viable alternatives such as Getter and Brighteon.social. And these are all free to sign up, folks. They're free, free to use. And there's no reason to still be on Facebook. There's just no reason whatsoever. All right, with that said, let me give credit to the sponsor today, the Satellite Phone Store, because we are facing a collapse of the infrastructure, I believe. We are facing cyber attacks. We are facing an economic event that's coming. I'll be talking about that more later here. And the Satellite Phone Store, SAT123.com, they are the solution to make sure you have telecommunications even when the cell towers go down, or if your cell phone is turned off, it can be deactivated. There can be cyber attacks. There can be power grid losses, rolling blackouts and things like that take out the cell towers. So using satellite phones, you have a backup communications device. You can send and receive texts, and you can send and receive calls. And you can call other people on their sat phones or their mobile phones or their landlines, whatever you want. And you can receive calls from all those different places as well. So go to the satellite phone store, sat123.com, and check out what they have available. And they are sponsors of today's podcast. And so I appreciate you supporting them as well. They're a great company. They've helped a lot of people get ready for emergencies. And they also donate phones to first responders when there are other emergencies like floods and hurricanes and earthquakes and so on. They've donated probably thousands of phones over the years. So they're definitely worth supporting. Thank you for your support. And next, we're going to talk about economic issues and much more. So I want to thank those of you joining us in progress here. This is the continuation of the situation update for, January 13th, 2022. But this segment also is the Brighteon.tv broadcast segment. And so each day I'm covering different topics here than the first part of the Situation Update podcast. And we're going to start off with some politics here. Joe Biden's job approval rating has plummeted to 33%. Now, you may recall, oh, and by the way, that's a Quinnipiac poll, which is not in any way biased towards conservatives. So Joe Biden's numbers, they used to be, 49% approval for Biden, and then they dropped to 46, 42, 38, 37, 36, and now 33. Now, you may recall about a year ago, well, not quite, but after Biden was sworn in as the fake pretender-in-chief last January 20th, I said that there actually is a plan underway to remove Joe Biden, but it's going to require his popularity to plummet to the low 30s. Remember that? Well, that plan has been triggered, and Biden's going to be forced out. He'll probably end up just resigning, is the way that's going to look. That's, in other words, only 1 out of 4 Americans is still in favor of Biden. Now, there might be another roughly 1 out of 4 who, well, less than that are undecided, but actually over half of America are opposed to Joe Biden. They think he's doing a horrible job. And in fact, according to this Quinnipiac poll, 53% of those who were polled disapproved of Joe Biden's job performance. So there you go, 53% disapprove. Now, what's astonishing about this poll is that there were other questions asked, not just Joe Biden's approval rating. One of the questions that was asked in the poll is, do you think that America's democracy is in danger of collapse? And 58% said they did believe that, 58%. So think about that. Now, for Republicans, that number was 62%, almost 2/3. For independents, it was 57%. And for Democrats, it was 56%. That's what's astonishing, is the Democrat number. So even the Democrats are seeing that Biden is not solving America's problems. He's not bringing America together. America is falling apart. Look at the food inflation. Look at the supply chain collapse. Look at the division. Look at just the disagreements, the rising crime rates in Democrat-controlled cities, the lawlessness, increased fuel prices, inability to get used cars at a reasonable price, or car parts for that matter, just on and on. The lockdowns, he's been doing a great job. But my caveat in all this is I'm done putting faith in men or women for that matter. I mean, a human. I'm done putting faith in a person. I was never a Trump cultist. I had hope for Trump, but let me tell you, you put your faith in men, you're going to be disappointed again and again and again. I put my faith in God, and I hold out skepticism for men. And I don't think that America's problems can be solved by any one person or even any group of men or women. I think we have a spiritual problem in America. We need to bring God back into our lives, in my opinion. We need Christian principles. We need faith. We need morality. We need ethics. We need to get the demons out of, Hollywood and culture and pop music and all that. You know what I'm saying? Let's just have our priorities straight. Let's stop murdering people. That's my opinion on the matter. So I'm not rooting for any one person. I'm rooting for the return of Jesus, frankly. I'm rooting for a divine intervention moment, not just for America, but the whole planet. That's what I'm rooting for. I don't think mankind's ever going to solve this issue. It's going to take divine intervention. Which reminds me, Biden's approval rating is 33% with the American people. Well, at the same time, Biden's approval rating is 0% with God. And I think that's the approval rating that actually counts. And a lot of these people, their lives are going to be pretty short, which means they're not that far away from knocking on Satan's door. I wouldn't want to be there when that day comes. If you've committed a lot of evil in your life and you've harmed children and murdered children and endorsed all that, maybe God will forgive you if you repent and change your ways and start saving lives. But I don't know, child murderers typically don't change. But the father of one of these children at the Ronald McDonald House shows the letter that he received, said, you're going to be evicted. Your child. And he calls it unimaginable cruelty. So, think about this. The McDonald's Corporation, there's always been a weird pedophilia kind of vibe going on. Like, what's with the Hamburglar and all the weird furry animal creatures that McDonald's had, in the ads in the 1970s? You know what I'm talking about? It's like all these weird characters, this giant purple goo looking creature. And, Ronald McDonald's is this giant clown, which is creepy. And then you got the Hamburglar and whoever else. And it's all just creepy. And then they associate joy with eating the junk food that, will harm their health for life because they're eating junk food. And then they add on top of that here, have these weird, pedophile dressed up furry grown men dressed as clowns and burglars and so on. And they're going to play with you in the little kiddie area. And okay, that's enough, which again, I don't think they're doing that. Well, except maybe the McRib. I've always wondered what kind of mystery meat that is. Because there's no ribs in there, right? You're like, at first, you open it up, and because I used to eat at McDonald's when I was a kid, and you open it up, you're like, this is shaped like kind of like a slab of ribs, but there's no ribs in there. Like, who would make meat shaped like ribs? Like, what kind of weird twisted thing, like an anatomical Frankenstein thought, is going through the heads of people? They're like, let's make a meat patty shaped like ribs with no bones in it, but it's a mystery meat, it's processed meat, and every piece is pressed and shaped to be exactly the same. It's no wonder people think it's Soylent Green, because we don't know, why is every chicken McNugget only one of three shapes? There's only three shapes of chicken McNuggets, and those three shapes are repeated over and over and over and over again. It's like, something is not right about this. And I've seen chicken meat, and no two pieces are exactly the same, not in the real world. No. These are formed. Remember a few years ago when McDonald's tried to roll out a bunch of salads to say, and we're healthy too. And the salads bombed because even their own customers said, we're not coming here to be healthy. We're just desperate for food. Everything's closed except at McDonald's. And you're like, oh my gosh, is this the last option? You pull into the drive-thru and you kind of hate yourself a little right in that moment, like, I'm going to have to flog myself for this one. And you start thinking, like, what can I get here? Okay, this is the state that's about to legalize, the internment camps, the concentration camps. Washington State not long ago legalized the liquefaction of deceased humans to be turned into what we're calling flesh goo and flushed down the municipal, sewage systems, which goes into the biosludge processing facility to be turned into, quote, fertilizer that's nitrogen rich, that is then dumped on the orchards and the farms all over rural Washington. You know that, right? I'm not making that up. That's not a joke. That's the cold hard truth. You can go look it up. Just go to naturalnews.com, search for flesh goo, Washington, I don't know, human composting. And you'll see the story, like a crazy stealthy way to eliminate lots of bodies, it seems, doesn't it? Right? Yeah. So, you know what it takes to do this? Because I read the law. They have to use a lot of lye, LYE, which is also known as caustic soda. So if you have a lot of lye, apparently it eats away the dead human flesh. And then in the laws in Washington State, because they're all green and progressive, they're like, this is recycling. No, it's feeding the dead to the living is what that is. That's right out of the Matrix, you crazy psychos. Turning people into flesh goo and concentrating them into fertilizer and spreading it on the farms. I mean, you're feeding dead people to the living people. So it's a kind of cannibalism. And it's happening in Washington right now. That's exactly how it works. I'm just telling you, this is all real. I'm not making this up. I know I interject some humor and some satire in a lot of podcasts. This part is not a joke. Seriously, fact check it. So, the question I asked yesterday, I was like, hey, where has everybody gone? Where are all the workers? What if one day soon, part of the answer is like, hey, how come we have all this extra fertilizer coming out of the biosludge facility? Man, there's a lot of trucks running these days. Where are they going? Where's all that fertilizer coming from? It's coming from the death camps, obviously. Now, I know this is a weird segue and a weird time to plug nutrition, but did you know that biosludge can't be used on certified organic foods? So, my store, healthrangerstore.com, almost everything we sell is certified organic, and everything we sell is lab tested for heavy metals, which would indicate, any kind of contamination of the soil, toxic pollution, glyphosate, microbiology, things like that. So we sell, although we don't even have it in stock right now, but we sell Ranger buckets, which are certified organic, lab tested, long-term storable emergency food. And people love them. We can't keep them in stock. Other companies sell conventional emergency food, which is a lot more affordable. So I understand it has its place. Like some places you can spend, I think, $99 and you get a lot of, GMO soy and I don't know, MSG or whatever, salt and sugar and textured vegetable protein. Well, kind of the dirty little secret is that stuff can be grown in recycled humans in states like Washington, because that's where that stuff gets spread. So I'm telling you, if you're buying non-organic, groceries even, or storable food or whatever, if it comes out of Washington State, it can be grown in dead people. Not even kidding. Now, see, I'm a big advocate of clean food, and this is why I'm one of the few people who's willing to talk about this, because it's a horrifying topic. Let's face it. Not everybody wants to know what's in the biosludge that's spread on the farms. Because, okay, well, let me just mention you should watch my film called Biosludged. But one of the things that came out in the film is that, how to say this? Like try to hold back your gag reflex on this one, but everything that gets flushed down toilets, everything goes into the biosludge fertilizer that gets spread on farms. And so a lot of farmers notice that after the biosludge trucks dump their loads and leave, and they try to spread this stuff around, they're finding, feminine hygiene products, condoms, plastics. Some of it's all ground up. And when we've looked at biosludge under a microscope, we find all these microplastics and chunks of red and blue plastic chunks, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. I'm not going to go into any more detail because I don't want to gross you out, but it's everything that gets flushed ends up on the farms. Okay. Everything. just letting you know how that works. And this isn't just Washington. for the biosludge, it's every major city in America. Now, in a lot of European cities, they don't do that. They incinerate the toxic sewage sludge, the human waste, and then they end up with just ash. And then they can take the ash and they can use it, which is just minerals basically, and they can mix it into the concrete, and they can pour, sidewalks or overpasses or bridges or whatever out of the concrete, which is fine. That's fine with me. You want to take the human sewage and turn it into concrete. That's a great way to lock up the minerals. So I just want to be clear, because I know the world is so insane. Sometimes you can't tell the difference between like what's fiction and what's fact. So I just want to be clear. Almost everything I've said here is fact, and you can look it up and verify it. So thank you for listening today. We'll be back with you tomorrow. This is a crazy time. All right, be well. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Thanks for listening today. Take care.